Hi everyone. This video is about building code changes that are coming to our residential construction as part of 2024 building code release. And I'm going to try and keep it light here. I'm not going to take a deep dive into any of the technical terms, sort of catering to my general public that are interested in construction, I guess, for whatever reason. I'm going to just explain the end result of what these changes will be. They're coming our way in the new multifamily construction in the next few years. And because you're going to start seeing some of these new unit layouts and some funky new things happening. And hopefully because you watch this video, you'll be able to connect the dots as to why this is happening. My name is Ksenia. I'm a licensed architect, a developer, and a builder on Vancouver Island. And multi-family residential construction is my bread and butter. So let's dive right in. Every so often, BC Building Code goes through an update and a new version is released into the world, into the wild, and it becomes the law for all of British Columbia, except for Vancouver. They have their own building code, which in many ways is even more stringent. So typically there would be a deadline announced, and if you want your building to follow the older version of code, you have until up until a certain date to submit your building permit. And if you didn't meet the deadline, so now you have to follow the new and latest release. There's usually kind of a mad rush of people trying to submit by the deadline because every new code is usually more stringent than the previous one. And there are always some new rules that weren't there before, and it's getting more and more difficult to build buildings, never less difficult and never less expensive. So each new release kind of carries that, with it. So this year in March, we got a new version of BC Code with specifically two items that everyone considers to be, major. Big change number one was the additional seismic requirements, which essentially means that the structure now needs to be more robust and have more shear walls, which are, these reinforced walls that when a lateral force, such as earthquake, acts on them, they're kind of reinforced and remain stable rather than toppling over, right? So BC, which is prone to earthquakes in many areas, has now this more stringent requirement, which sure makes sense. And we now need to locate more of these walls around the building. And I haven't built a structure to a new code, but kind of rumors out there from structural engineers that I talk to is that this new rule will make your structure about 20% more expensive. So not your overall project cost is 20% more, but your structure cost, which is a big ticket item. So that part is going to be approximately 20% more expensive. And then the second major item and requirement of this building code is that 100% of all units in a multifamily building now have to be adaptable units. So what is an adaptable unit? In essence, it's a unit, a condo or a rental apartment that can later on, as you live in it, be adapted to accommodate you aging in place, or you developing a disability, or you having limited mobility due to your age. So think walkers, crutches, wheelchairs and stuff like that. So with simple changes to the unit, you can now adapt it to your new condition, and you're able to stay in place, age in place, without needing to move to a different unit. So it is different from what we know and what we call universal design and barrier-free design, where the expectation is that you are using a wheelchair and all of your, and all the turning radii and stuff, all of that. This is a different. Universal design is a more stringent requirement, so this is not it. This is adaptable units that can be adapted. In the past, municipalities would take initiatives about this. So Saanich, for example, has been doing this for years, as long as I've been practicing on Vancouver Island, where they would ask for 10 to 15%, I don't remember exactly, but of all condo units to be adaptable in order for a building to be approved. So now the building code says, no, we want 100% of all units to be adaptable. and they prescribe everything that needs to happen, all the sizes and clearances that need to be met in order for the unit to meet this adaptability requirement. Overall, basically what this means is that the units in new construction in the next few years are going to have to get bigger, which also means that the developers will be able to squeeze less unit in that same building that they were going to build. But the developer's profit margin has to remain the same around the 20% mark in order for a bank to lend them money to build this project. So the profit remains the same. The developer has to continue making the same amount of money from this building, but now he or she has less units to sell. And also they will be paying 20% more for their structure. So the building is more expensive, less units to sell. So however way you slice it or dice it, these units will cost more to the buyer. There's no way around it that I see, unless tell me if you see something that I don't. But I don't see how these can remain the same price if I'm paying more to build this building and have less units to sell and have less people to split this cost of this building amongst, right? So each individual is going to pay more. In addition to that, you're going to see some weird unit layouts as well, as the developers are going to start bending over backwards to keep the costs down, because contrary to popular belief, the developers are trying really hard to keep the cost down so that the units on the other side are not as expensive and are competitive amongst other developers. So to keep the cost down, the developers are going to start creating these units that will follow the adaptability requirements at an expense of an efficiency, essentially, right? So good unit layouts and adaptable unit layouts are not necessarily always going to be the same thing. So let's go through the specifics of this so that if you are in the market for a condo in the next 2-3 years and you're starting to see some weird things that don't make sense, you'll know why. This is a PDF of a seminar that I've attended with an Architectural Institute of British Columbia. Has a lot of technical stuff in it, but I'll just show you the relevant parts of it. Basically, they start by saying that the way they see it, people that are writing this building code, right? The way they see it, 100% of all units is the only way forward if we want to preserve human rights and provide equity for all, right? So the argument being that the older people and people with limited ability should not be choosing from fewer options when it comes to housing than able-bodied and young people, right? And I get the argument. However, typically speaking, people that these groups are the same people that are most vulnerable to housing costs, right? And this will drive up the costs of all housing, in my opinion. So is 100% of all units, requiring 100% of all units being larger and more expensive, is that the right way to do it? I'm not 100% convinced that it is. Similarly to my other videos where I argued that the standardized housing designs where, I had my doubts about those and my disagreements about how that approach was unrolled. But that approach was optional. This isn't. This is the law of the land, quote unquote, right? So they're claiming that this will have moderate to minimal impact to the industry. I disagree. I think this will have a very real impact on the industry and specifically on the end user, on the buyer, right? So then, a bunch of random stuff here in the background and technical bulletins, etc., supplemental information. And so they get to where will this major update, as they call it themselves, where will this apply? So application is for most multifamily dwellings, including common spaces, and how it will affect the unit itself is doorway requirements for entry, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, and 1 living space are going to be different and increase. They're going to increase, be larger. Hallway requirements will increase. there's requirements for one adaptable bedroom, one adaptable bathroom, one adaptable kitchen, and all controls. So if your unit is more than one bedroom, let's say it's a 2-3 bedroom unit, then only one of those bedrooms, only one of those bathrooms has to be adaptable. So the rest of them can remain as is. And they just sort of tell you later on what these clearances that they're requesting, what they mean, and basically, why 1300 by essentially by 800. It's because that's the space that the wheelchair takes. And then why that turning radius of 1700 by 1700. And that again has to do with how a wheelchair rotates. That used to be a smaller requirement of 1500 by 1500, and now it is slightly larger. So application and where it applies, and in short, this will be all new condo and rental buildings. That's what that technical language is. And then accepted buildings, where it won't apply, is detached houses, duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, row houses, and so on. And what it has to do with is that if you have to amend a floor plan in your duplex or in your single family home, then likely you have that ability. You don't have to ask strata. You don't have to ask, where like in a condo, you would have to get a permission from a condo board to amend your unit. So here you don't have to do that. And therefore there's more flexibility for you to kind of move walls and such. You're not as limited as you are in a condo unit. So that's why those buildings are accepted. Construction requirements, and what this paragraph is talking about is that you don't have to build to all of the requirements of the adaptable dwelling unit, but you do have to provide space for it, so that later on, if someone wanted to adapt this unit to their disability or limited ability, mobility, they can do that easily because the space is there. So small changes, for example, like the grab bars, you don't have to install the grab bars when you build this unit, but you do have to make provisions that these grab bars in the toilet can be installed at a later date without moving walls, without moving the toilet, and so on and so forth. So you don't have to install or tile a large 1700 by 1700 millimeter shower, but you have to allow for space to be there so that later on someone could do that. So tiling is considered a small item. Moving a toilet, moving a shower, moving a system, big item, and has to be in place at the time of construction. Building access requirement, this honestly is just very prescribed, and you guys don't need to know that, but just know that they are very specific on what these corridors can be, and like what dimensions they have to be. So the idea here is that if you have a very long corridor, a person in a wheelchair doesn't need to go too far in order to be able to turn around at 1700 by 1700, and then they can turn around and go back, and every so often you have to provide for these turning areas, right? And then they kind of give you all sorts of variations that can be. Visible signals. So that's one thing that we're going to start seeing in this new construction in these units. Every room, every sleeping room or bed space, every room, living room, kitchen, bathrooms, they all have to have this fire strobe light, the visible, that will blink. And the idea there is that someone with hearing issues, someone deaf, needs to be able in every room see this blinking and realize that there's a fire alarm on and exit safely, right, to safety. So any room where it could be reasonable to assume that that person will be spending any extended time. So not like storage rooms or laundry rooms or anything like that, but living spaces. They will all, in a couple of years, you're going to start seeing these on the walls everywhere. So that's one thing. Then they tell you how they need to be basically installed, irrelevant. doorways. So that's another big thing that's going to be affected. Doorways and the doorway clearances. Right now, for any typical unit, all the interior doors are usually 30 inches wide, right? Sometimes we make them 32 if we're being luxurious. Sometimes it's 28 for the bathrooms because that's all you can fit. So anywhere between 28 to 32. Now for the adaptable doorways, 34 is going to be the smallest door width that you can have. So 34 clear, that means from here to here, which in reality is actually a 36 inch door. So big change. If you 6 inches for the door clearances will make a big difference for these units, especially for bathrooms and things like that. So they just sort of explain to you why that, all these clearances that are required there, because a person in the wheelchair, depending on how they approach the door, need to have a certain kind of clearances to exit and enter. Door clearances. So the door itself has to be 34 clear, 850 millimeters clear. But in addition to that, you have to have, almost 5 feet to each side of the door as a clear area. So now, if you've purchased a condo recently, or if you've seen some recent new construction condo plans for the last couple of years, you almost never have a wide entry into a condo, right? Because, some of these units are 400 square feet. You can't lose any areas to the entry, right? So it's given to somewhere else, that extra 5 square feet, 10 square feet, that's given somewhere else. And the door into a unit, you open it and you kind of have a 3x3 foot landing, and that's it. So gone are those days. Now you're going to be seeing a lot more spacious entryways and a lot more wiggle room in that area. Some clearances for sliding doors, that's irrelevant. Now this is another thing that you're going to see everywhere, right? So power door operators, I don't know if you guys know, it's that one thing where you press a button and there's this arm at the top of the door and it opens the door for you. And we're all used to it in public spaces, right? In public bathrooms and so on and so forth. So now you're going to see these inside the new construction units everywhere. And the reason for that is that if you provide a door with power door operator, then you require less clearance in front of it, right? So I showed you guys, this is how much you need it if you have a regular door, right? And then this is how much you need if you have a power door operator. And there's nothing that is as much of a commodity, nothing as pricey as the space inside these units, right? So whatever that power door operator costs, it's likely less expensive than the space that it allows you to save. So some of these units, will only be able to make them work with power door operators. So get ready, you're going to see them everywhere inside the units. So hallways and corridors, blah, blah, blah. This is not as relevant. Bedrooms. So actually bedrooms were affected less than I thought that they were. I'm just going to skip to the plan. They explain what it is that needs to happen and why. So now you need a bed and you need to provide a clear space in front of the bed for someone to maybe helping you on and off the bed, loading and unloading. In front of your closet, will need to have, your closet now will need to have clear openings, or first of all, clear opening of 900, which some of the closets, believe it or not, are smaller than that in some of the units, and then the clear space in front of it. But in reality, and of course the doors, right? So this is where you're going to start seeing a lot of power door operators into people's bedrooms, which is funny. Will make for some dramatic entrances. So let's skip to the plan. I know there's a plan somewhere here. Yeah, so here's the bedroom, right? Typical bedroom that they say that needs to happen. So right off the bat, they're using a power door operator so that they can provide a smaller clearance. And then a single bed. so that this other clearance, red clearance and green clearance, so that they can fit, right? So that they can provide this turning area of 1700 millimeters by 1500 millimeters. But they're able to achieve all of that in a very small bedroom. So under 8 feet and just slightly over 8 feet. Typical bedrooms in these condo units are 9 by 9, right? So that's an acceptable bedroom that we kind of collectively accept as a bedroom size. So this, in reality, all it takes is to argue that a single person is going to live in that bedroom and a single bed, and all your clearances you're able to meet except for the doors, where then a power door operator comes in handy. So if you are buying new construction soon and you get a set of plans for a building permit and you see all these single beds in all the bedrooms, and you're wondering why everyone is putting single beds, it's not because other beds don't fit. It's because the designers and architects have to demonstrate this turning radius. And yeah, don't worry, a different bed fits. It's just what needs to happen. So in short, the bedrooms are basically unaffected. The bathrooms, on the other hand, are really affected, right? So again, if you've been to any sort of new construction anytime recently, you have seen those bathrooms where it's an 8 by 5 room. You enter here and there's the sink, and then there's the toilet, and there's a shower or bathtub. That is the most typical, the most efficient way that developers found that they can lay out a bathroom in their unit, and that's what everyone is doing. Sometimes they're even a little bit less than 8 feet. They're 7.5 feet. So now that's gone. We will never see those bathrooms again. We'll know, a second bathroom in the unit can still be like that, but at least one bathroom is going to be huge, right? And so if you have a 1 bed, 1 bath, then that only bathroom is going to need to get really big. So, and they kind of explain what needs to happen. So you need to have a clear space in front of the sink. And then, they go about why, and then a clear space for the shower clearance. And the idea here is that later on someone, as I said, can change this into an adaptable wheelchair friendly shower. You don't need to do it now, but you need to provide for space for it to be there. So add an extra 900 by 1500 in front of the shower, where typically a toilet would be here. In a typical bathroom, like in this space, the toilet, there'd be a toilet and then a sink, and then that would be your bathroom. So now you can't do that anymore. So then let's go here, accessible showers, blah, blah, blah. And they explain to you why that same area makes sense. And so, so these are all the components and all the clearances that you have to provide in an accessible bathroom. So I skipped the toilet, but actually that's one of the most important ones. All of the toilets now have to be near a wall. So if in the past they were kind of hanging out in the middle, now they have to be near the wall so that a grab bar can be installed here and here, right? So, and then for the grab bar, you don't have to install them, but you have to provide the space to install them, and you have to reinforce this wall so that the grab bar can be installed at a later date. And then you have to provide this clear area next to a toilet, again, so that you can park your wheelchair and unload onto a toilet. And typically this is where the sink would be, right? Now you can't put a sink in there. The space has to remain clear. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So they go on about the grab bars and like what the grab bars will be. We're gonna skip through that. Bathroom grab bars, shower, blah, blah, blah. So I just want to get to the plan where it does show you what that actually looks like. And here you go. So in the past, again, typical bathroom would be the length of the shower and then like this. And actually, much shorter than this. This is 10.5. We're talking sometimes less than 8 feet. So typical bathroom would probably be something like this, right? This size. And in reality, in the past, you would have a tub, you would enter here, this is where the toilet would be, and then this is where the vanity would be, and then the wall, and that's it, right? So now these bathrooms in all of the new construction are going to get 30% bigger or so. And in reality, it doesn't sound like much, but it will affect the unit layouts, because anytime you introduce any sort of a jog into a unit, which is usually rectilinear, like it starts affecting the space outside the bathroom, right? So if you used to have maybe like a kitchen here, right? Now you have some sort of like a jog here and you don't know what to do with the space. Same as for anything else that's outside. And as you can see, they're again relying on these PDOs, power door operators, to provide the clearances. In reality, if you want a regular door, then you have to provide even more clearance. If not, you use the PDO, which is, of course, money, right? So now we have this bathroom that is 30% or so larger than it otherwise would have been, right? But then look at that. You enter, and then your toilet is here, and this space has to be clear, right? So this is a clear space around the toilet where nothing can be. And so what ends up happening is this very large bathroom, and look at the size of the sink. Again, gone are the days of large countertops or double sinks or vanities that, marble, whatever, like we used to be able to do this, right? So you'd have 2 sinks or 1 sink and a lot of counter space. Now you can't impede into the space. So in reality, you're going to enter, it's going to be a very large room with a shower, a tiny sink, a toilet with tons of room around it, right? So you're now tiling this much more. It's going to be a wide open space with a lonely toilet in the corner. And I think we're going to start introducing storage space somewhere else in this bathroom. So again, gone are the days of big vanities. It's going to be elsewhere, freestanding, where you're going to keep your shampoos and stuff. So that's real. That's happening. So they're just kind of going through what needs to happen for this to become adaptable. And then so grab bars for the future, grab bar installations. So this is kind of what, and going back to this, actually, it is yet to be seen how this will be accepted, and someone will find all the loopholes that there are, right? Someone will say that this vanity, is not permanent, or it's not attached to the floor or something. They'll be hanging on the wall, and someone will say, well, I'm building this, right? But it's not attached to the wall, so it's not permanent. So, that's kind of how I'm going to do it now. Because then you can argue that it's an easy uninstall of the sink, just get a different sink. And maybe that will fly, that is, we'll see. But always count on people to find every loophole that there is to find. But still, some of these bathrooms are going to be much, much, much larger. And that, again, means a little more expensive, right? Or a lot more expensive. Now, adaptable dwelling kitchens. Kitchens are also very much affected by this, right? So here's a sample kitchen. So kitchens need to have a continuous countertop between cooktop and the kitchen sink. And the idea there is, if you have limited mobility, you fill up your pot of water in the sink, and now you need to get it to the stove. So you plop it on the counter, and then you drag it continuously. You need to be able to drag it continuously to the stove. So you're never lifting it and carrying it somewhere. You're dragging because you have limited mobility. So that does mean continuous. So I filled it up here, and then I dragged it onto the stove to cook, right? And then in addition to that, kitchens need to provide this much space, clear space, for wheelchair turning radius, right? What does that mean? That means kitchen islands are gone, right? Kitchen islands with sinks in them are for sure gone, right? So if you are a fan of kitchen island with a sink, then that's it. You're not going to see them anymore. Personally, I hate kitchen islands with a sink, so I'm happy to see them go. I think kitchen islands need to be just this beautiful slab of quartz or marble or whatever, so that when you're entertaining your people, you can just do a big spread and ta-da-da, and not have your dirty dishes just sitting there in the sink. So that lyrical thing is essentially all you need to know is that no more sinks in the kitchen islands, because if the sink is here, then you would need to lift the pot to to put it onto the stove, and that's not allowed. Okay, so yeah, this is just other variants of the kitchen. So yes, kitchens are going to be affected. You're going to see a lot more peninsulas than islands, right? A lot more of these U-shaped kitchens, because you can't have islands. Or again, someone's going to argue that this island is removable or something, but definitely sinks are gone, right? So you're going to see table islands where they install it, and it's probably that butcher block type, or someone will come up some sort of a design and will call it a removable island, but essentially islands are no longer going to happen. Controls and switches, it goes in deep detail about where exactly the switches need to be. Not really necessary to review, just that they will be easily reachable, essentially. Now, this is kind of where it gets to the actual meat of it and how this will affect the unit design. So this is a very typical design, 600 square foot. This tag is wrong here. I'll tell you why later. But 600 square foot design of a unit that you've seen 1 million times. Literally, this is a very typical design with, this is the outside, and then you have a living space with windows and a bedroom space with windows to the outside, and everything else doesn't have windows. And then, there's usually another unit here that is the same. And that's how the condo is. And then this balcony is kind of stuck in between the two units and is supported by the two walls. So anyways, this is a very typical layout. You kind of enter, here's your kitchen and a kitchen island and a kitchen sink, and then your living space, your bedroom, your walk-in closet, and your 5x8 bathroom, which is exactly what I told you guys about. Sink, toilet, freestanding, and tub. So nothing about this is adaptable based on these new rules. So here you go, the same unit and what needed to happen for it to become adaptable. So again, please note that power door operators are used on all doors because that allows you to save space. So here they are, all interior doors, except for the closet doors, are power door operated, right? Then we have our bedroom, which now shows a single bed, which is basically unaffected. But our walk-in closet is gone. There's no more walk-in closet, right? So this is where it used to be, but now this bathroom has to be way bigger than it was. And so therefore there's no more walk-in closet. And you enter and there's this big space, again, small vanity and a free toilet in the corner. And then your kitchen, right? No more island, peninsula, sink in the peninsula, and yeah, and then like a continuous path of travel, this gray kind of square, the continuous path of travel that needs to happen and not be obstructed. So again, they've got these tags backwards. So this unit over here, the one that I showed you in the previously, is around 604 square feet. And this unit over here is now larger at 630 or something, 26 square feet. So basically 22 square feet added to this unit, which by itself doesn't sound like too much, right? But overall, it has a compound effect in the building. So, oh, my cat is meowing. 1 second. Come, Elsa. You're so annoying. So it has an overall compound effect on the building. And if your building is a typical building with, something like 25 units per floor, six floors. Gosh, sorry, my annoying cat has been distracting me. There she is. Stop it, Elsa. This is Elsa, everyone. Anyways, so 20 something square feet per unit doesn't sound like a big deal until you start looking at a building as a whole. And then, for example, your typical 6-story building, this is a larger side building, but it'll affect everyone, similarly. So this is 19,000 square feet in building. So overall, in this tutorial that we had with AIBC, the code consultants said to us that you need about 4 to 5% extra area to allow for adaptability, right? So if this building is 19,000 square feet, at 4%, that's 760 square feet that you now need more of or less of, right? So you're basically losing a unit. A 760 square foot unit is a nicely sized 2-bedroom unit that you're going to lose on each floor. So 6 2-bedroom units per building that you're going to lose, and while paying more for the structure, right? So I don't know, I'm roughing this out. It really depends on how much these 2-bed units are, but let's say a developer is making $150,000 per unit. So in 6 units, 900,000, almost $1 million, plus the extra costs, the extra other costs, right? So you're losing $1 million just by losing the 6 units. You're gonna have to make that $1 million up somewhere. In this case, for example, it is this building has 160 units, so that's over 5,000, like 5.6 thousand per unit that you're going to be paying extra just in general terms. That's not accounting for the extra structure and extra things that you need to do, like power door operators and so on and so forth. So I am seeing that it won't be unheard of that these units are now 10K more, right? And does that matter? I don't know. I have no idea. In my opinion, that's a lot, right? And in addition to that, you now have a unit layout that's potentially not as efficient, right? Like you're not getting your walk-in closet and such. But there's a bigger issue, right? Are we, as a society, are we okay paying $10,000 more per unit so that these units can be adaptable? Or do we need 100% of them to be adaptable? Who knows? I think that 100% was a bit of an overreach. I think there was a number in there somewhere, maybe more than 15, but definitely less than 100. I don't know what that number is, and I'm not here to pass judgment of any sorts. I'm just here to talk about the implications of it, right? So hopefully this was productive and informative for you guys, and hopefully now that when you're seeing these weird new things that are happening in construction, you know why, and actually when is that being implemented. So what they did is the original deadline for this was for March 2025, right? So you needed to submit for building permit before March of next year to not have to do all of these adaptability guidelines. In reality, this caused like a real uproar in an industry, right? So everyone, like developers were saying, well, what do you mean? I've been in rezoning with Saanich for 5 years. I started this process 5 years ago. I am in my final round of rezoning of comments. Now you're saying I have to redesign this whole thing to be able to submit for a building permit before March? Because sometimes these building permit applications can take, 6 months to produce. So it kind of went back and forth for a bit, and now finally they said, no, if you were in stream already, if you've applied for your rezoning, if you applied for your development permit, you have until March of 2027. So they're giving you 3 more years to wrap up whatever it is that you're doing and submit for a building permit. And then everyone else, if you haven't applied for anything yet, then you have that deadline of 2025, which means that some of these buildings will have to apply before right after 2025, and we'll miss this deadline. And we're gonna, these buildings are gonna need to get approved and built. So, but as early as next year and a half or 2 years, we're gonna start seeing some of these come to life. And then certainly by 2028, which is, I guess, 3 years from now, we're gonna start seeing a lot of these units with these changes coming forward. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think this was a bit of an overreach by government in terms of, making things more expensive for developers, and then sort of for the righteous cause, but then the wrong approach to it. I don't know, right? So I'm still kind of figuring this out in my head. Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know let me know if this content is entertaining for at least some of you, right? These take me a bit of time to compile my thoughts for, and so it'd be nice to hear if anyone is even watching these until the end. And yeah, if this was productive and informative, and what do you think about the changes overall? Okay, have a good day, everyone. See you next time.